So I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm going to take a deep breath. We're there. We have hit the end. I might just mention that both Olga and Dr. Brown are board members of HSGR. So that you can see the leadership that's taking place. So going forward, we're going to do a quick roundtable. If you have questions, we'll get you a microphone. We got a couple of loose ones laying on the table. We've got Bridget will come back, or you can stay where you are, Bridget, and we can ask you questions. We'll bring you a microphone. And so if you have a question, just rise and shine. I see Lena sitting in the audience, and just while we've got a break as the microphone goes around.
At that point in can you hear me okay?
Hello?
Oh. When they went from the Volga in 1906, if they went from the Volga to that area of Kazakhstan, which would have been called Western Siberia at that point, the boundary lines of Central Asia were not drawn until the 1920s. They would have gone as free settlers. There were basically three reasons why they left the Volga area. There had been some droughts. There was difficult to find land, good land, and a minister named Stolypin did a land reform movement and was offering free land. I think they moved that direction for the same reason that some of our relatives moved to the Americas and Canada, and they just went east instead of west. That village is hidden deep into Kazakhstan, a long way away from Moscow, and I think that was, in many ways, they were trying to hide themselves.
In the 1941 removal, how did it determine whether you ended up in Siberia or if you ended up in one of the Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, whatever?
I don't know that there was a reason. I think it was which cattle car you ended up getting stuck in, more than anything else. I didn't see that there was any rhyme or reason, though I do know certain villages, just by reason of the whole village and being transported at once, would end up in similar places. The one thing the Soviets did do, though, was they never put, if you were Kazakh, you ended up somewhere a long way from Kazakhstan. They didn't want to put people where they could blend in with the local population and, disappear. But I don't think there was really a reason. They weren't that organized, I don't believe.
My great-grandmother says that her siblings were all sent to Siberia. They could have ended up here, this place you guys are talking about.
Being sent to Siberia essentially meant that
on a train,
Omsk-Reed,
Okay.
you know, it could have been, they could have been sent to the Far East and north to gold mines like Kolyma and others, which were horrible places to get sent. The other thing about getting sent to these areas, there were special settlements, which were more like villages, but they were still under Gulag administration, or if you were really bad, you got sent to a camp. There was even a camp in Kazakhstan called the Akmola Camp for Wives of Traders of the Motherland. And it had 20,000 women at one point put in, and it was a camp. But most Volga Germans and German Russians were sent to communities where then they were put to work in mines or industry or that kind of stuff. But it could have easily been into Kazakhstan. When they said Siberia, it did include particularly northern Kazakhstan.
I know I saw you raising. No, I just wanted to say, just as a comment about people being sent to where would people being sent to? And I know that sometimes there were always points where they collected people, so people would get told to go to a certain point. So sometimes people had to walk for quite a few days to get to the train station, from which they would then be deported. So sometimes it took quite a long time to get there. But also at these train stations, there would be trains with women and children, let's say, go to Kazakhstan, and then the trains with men or someone else to Siberia. So it was depending on which train you got to and from which village you are sent to. Okay.
Two right there.
Okay, I'm gonna make a line this way, so I'll go him and then I'll go you.
What permitted you, Dr. Brown, to go to Kyrgyzstan? I'm sorry, to this location, and not others?
We had a Kazakh student come to the University of Wyoming in 2010, and he said that universities over there were looking for partnerships. So the University of Wyoming, I went in 2012 to Almaty, Kazakhstan, to sign a cooperation agreement between the University of Wyoming and the Kazakh National University. Not knowing I wasn't part of a research group looking for German Russians. And then I went to a museum in Karaganda, and it had a bar graph of the nationalities that were sent to Kazakhstan and were under Gulag administration, and there was one bar that was 3 times high as the other bars, and it said 440-some thousand German Russians. And that freaked me out a little bit. And that's what started me looking, every time I work in with journalists and journalism professors over there, but every time I go over there, I take whatever opportunity I can to do some research, and to look at what I can. I'm in a rather unique position. The first time I went to Karaganda, the partner that came with me, my translator and partner from the Kazakh National University, somebody asked them, looked real confused, pointed at me and said, "What's that American doing here?" Because they didn't see a lot of Americans. And my partner said, "Looking for Germans." And her response from this other person was, "Oh, Volga Germans, many are here." So I knew I was sort of in the right area, and just it sort of grew over time. I've been to Kazakhstan. This last September was my 5th visit, so I've been there a few times. And the country has changed dramatically from 2012 and my first visit to this last one. This last visit, by the way, if you want to go over there, just grab your passport, get off the plane, passport control will look at it and say, "Have a nice visit." And which wasn't the case the first time I went over there. So now if that's on your bucket list, now's a good time.
Somebody had asked about the deportations. I know a little bit about how they decided where you're sent. There was a plan for groups of villages were sent to a specific place. About 40% went to Kazakhstan because it's all the same country. And even that northern part of Kazakhstan where you are is pretty close to Western Siberia. And there's about 3 months, and a lot of people are moved to different spots if you're following your family. And then the men are moved to different areas. In January, that's when the labor army starts. And they would be sent to to mines or to like wartime industries for metallurgy, some of those had real high death rates, some of them, but that's where they were working. But then if you're looking for family that was how they got reunited, in 46, when they don't have to work in those armies anymore, they have to stay where they were until 55 for some people. So a lot of families don't get together till 55. Some do. People can move. And then a lot of people that had to be way up in the north and logging, they moved to Kazakhstan because it's warmer. So if you see, might explain some patterns if you find family. Kazakhstan was just a little bit better than the really small places way up in the north. But that's it.
Okay, you and you.
There was some Russian propaganda that showed Germans, like on posters or maybe newspapers, with horns on their heads. I don't know if you're familiar with some of that. I had some of my father's relatives were relocated to Kazakhstan, the Karaganda area, and some of them to Siberia and some to Turkmenistan. And even as recently as one of my cousins, when they showed up in, I think it was in Kazakhstan, it may have been in Siberia, the children looked at them and said, "Where are your horns?" So just a small story here that was related to me by one of my relatives.
As far as who went where, it just now hit me. My grandmother's family went to far north into Siberia on the eastern side of the Ural Mountains into the mines. And my grandfathers their family wound up they spent a year in Kazakhstan, and then they got settled in Kyrgyzstan. This is going by faulty memory, but that's same village.
So I know just before we took the break, several of you came up and asked questions of the prior part of the panel. If you've got any questions for those that didn't get answered, feel free. Otherwise, we're going to start wrapping up so that you can kind of get your best face on to attend the banquet tonight. And those that are board members have another hour's worth of meetings.
I have a quick comment, Bridget Crosby.
Yes.
Any of you who wants more information or would like to connect with me, please come up and talk to me, because I'd like to really exchange information, because exchanging information is how we fill the holes in our family histories. So please don't be shy. I'm not going to bite, not yet. But please come up and say hi and give me your information. Okay, thank you.
And just one more thing. One last time that you get to hear from me, but if there are any speakers in here that didn't get a dark forest green bag, please come forward and I'll make sure that you get a bag. It's a gift for the speakers, please. Thank you.